The Sikh Human Rights Group proudly presents our Corporate Social Responsibility series. Today's topic, how large and small businesses can become more sustainable whilst maintaining their current levels of operation. Today you'll be listening to Mr Ben Clifford from Fidelity International Limited, as well as Dr. Jasdev Rai, the Director of the Sikh Human Rights Group. Fidelity International Limited, or FIL for short, is a company that provides investment management services, including mutual funds, pension management and fund platforms to private and institutional investors. Fidelity International was originally established in 1969 as the international investment subsidiary of Fidelity Investments in Boston, before being spun out as an independent business in 1980. Since then, it has continued to operate as a private company owned by its employees. Mr Ben Clifford is a chartered environmentalist and a full member of the Institute for Environmental Management and Assessment. He is the Global Health, Safety and Sustainability Associate Director of Fidelity International and has been working in the health, safety and sustainability field for over 15 years across a number of different sectors, including aerospace, defence, technology, transportation and finance. Through his very career, he has focused on a number of different areas, specialising in H&S and environmental management systems, environmental management, safety culture, mental health, corporate governance, and design for environment. In his free time, Ben enjoys spending time with his young family, exploring the outdoors, and has a passion for cooking. Welcome, Ben, and thank you very much for joining us today.
No, thank you for having me. Good to be here.
Wonderful. Can I please ask you to begin, Ben, by telling our audience a little bit about and/or an overview of Fidelity's corporate sustainability journey today?
Yeah, happy to. Give a bit of background. I joined Fidelity International probably around 2.5 years ago in the role as Health, Safety and Sustainability Associate Director. And really, the appointment role was to look at how we could embed a more strategic approach to health, safety and sustainability. So over the past kind of 2.5 years, we've really focused on ensuring that we've got good governance structures to look at corporate sustainability. So earlier in 2020, we created a Corporate Sustainability Committee, which was sponsored by members of the senior management team and brought together all the kind of key functions that contribute to corporate sustainability. I think the aim of that committee is really to make sure that the corporate sustainability is embedded in everything that we do at Fidelity and our wider business strategies. Earlier this year, we released our first corporate sustainability report, which outlines the different areas of focus that we have in terms of corporate sustainability, and these across the kind of spectrum of environment, social and governance. So looking at the ESG element of it. And in addition to the corporate sustainability, we've also got quite a robust sustainable investing approach as well. So Fidelity, we really look at it from two aspects: what we do on the investment side, but also what we do on the corporate side as well, to make sure that we embed sustainability in everything we do as a business.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rai, could I please ask you to briefly introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Sikh Human Rights Group's policies over the decades towards transnational corporations and other business enterprises?
Hello, thank you. My name is Jasdev Singh Rai. I'm a medical doctor and also director of the Sikh Human Rights Group. We have been set up since 1985, and whereas our concentration was essentially human rights documentation and recording violations initially, but then we diversified into many other things. We are based on the principles of the teachings of the Sikh gurus, which include things such as responsibilities, duties, ethics, not only across in the individual, but across communities, nations, and even the corporate sector and businesses, and how they relate to the wider society. In 1996, we started raising issues at the UN that the world has moved on from the days the UN was first formed, when the nation state was very powerful. But by 1996, the corporate corporates were far more powerful than most states, but there wasn't a integration of human rights or environmental policies or accountability at any level. It was very much left to the bosses of the corporates, whether they wanted or not wanted to be more compliant with human rights and other things. And it became an issue at that time. We didn't really have a status at the UN at that time. We used to go through other organizations. Finally, in 2015, we got a consultative status, and we've been engaged more. And by that time, what was very interesting is that two things happened. There were these binding instruments on human rights, which was across the board, both for transnationals and small businesses. And there is a working group on binding instruments for transnationals. In both, I think it's, I think the corporate sector and businesses have been a bit ahead of the UN and have voluntarily also introduced, I suspect mostly due to a new a breed of managerial staff coming up who have been brought up with the ideas and awareness of wider human rights issues, environmental issues, and also they feel that that is what society and consumers want in general. So it's really exciting that it's interesting to us that many corporations and even small businesses have integrated human rights, sustainability, environmental issues within their working practices, and we're very keen to hear about this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. Ben, my second question for you is, in your opinion, how involved is the senior leadership team at Fidelity with corporate social responsibility initiatives and decisions? For example, in your professional opinion, how much does sustainability and CSR weigh into your executive team's decisions?
I think at Fidelity, it's key to everything that we do. As I mentioned, from an investment perspective, we've got a responsibility to hold the investee companies accountable to sustainability standards and ensure that when we're investing money that we're doing it in a responsible manner. The second aspect of that is on the corporate side. So what we're asking our investees companies to do, we need to do on the corporate side as well. So the integration of our corporate sustainability committee, we also have a sustainable investing operating committee. Those two bodies really ensure that the senior management play a key role in integrating sustainability in the wider business decisions, but also our long-term strategy around sustainability. So it's absolutely fundamental to how we operate. I think more generally, just in terms of what I've kind of seen over my career in sustainability, that it is now a topic that the senior management see as key. When I started out, probably 15, 17 years ago, it was very difficult to get on the senior management kind of agenda in terms of some of the environmental responsibilities or other sustainability responsibilities. I think that's changed over the 15 years now. I think things like climate change and some of the big mega trends that we're seeing around biodiversity and other areas have really put it front and centre for senior management. I think the difference now is that the conversations are very much more around how, as an organisation and a business, can we address some of these issues, address the negative impacts that we have, but also how can we have a positive impact as well, and what the opportunities are in terms of sustainability. So, yeah, definitely seen that transition over time.
Thank you very much. That was incredibly insightful. My next question is just simply, what's Fidelity's long-term CSR strategy?
Yeah, so as I said, we've recently launched our corporate sustainability report, which outlines some of the kind of key commitments that we've made around ESG. I'll focus on the areas that I'm directly responsible for. as an organisation, we've identified climate change and the impact that we have on climate change and vice versa as the most significant environmental impact. And in line with that, we've outlined a commitment to be net zero from our corporate operations by 2030. We had originally set the goal as 2040, but we've done a lot of work over the past 12 months in terms of looking at the data around our emissions, understanding what opportunities we have, and we can feel we can be more aggressive, and we think we should move as quickly as possible in terms of trying to achieve that goal. We've also set a goal on the investment side to halve the emissions from our investment portfolios by 2030 and be net zero by 2050, and that's something that we've recently announced. So I think those are the areas that we see from an environmental perspective as the most significant impact for us. In order to make sure that long-term commitment is credible, we've set some interim targets. So within our corporate sustainability report, you'll be able to read that we've set a number of targets around 2024, and these again are across reductions that we want to make in terms of some of our environmental impacts, some of the targets around diversity and inclusion in terms of gender diversity, cultural diversity, making sure that those are embedded within the business, and then on the governance side, ensuring that governance framework in terms of the corporate sustainability and reporting up to the board and making sure that sustainability is part of kind of senior management decisions. Those are all things that we're targeting both in the short term and the long term as an organisation.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was extremely interesting. Just as a side note, Fidelity's most recent corporate social responsibility report is available in the description to this video. My next question for you, Ben, is in your expert opinion, what are the greatest issues and challenges to large and small businesses in the United Kingdom especially becoming more sustainable and or adopting more aggressive CSR strategies?
Yeah, I think again, I think it goes back to the point I was making. I think now businesses do realise that sustainability is key, and to have a successful business strategy, that ESG and sustainability is part of that. I think the difficulty for organisations, both large and small, is understanding what their biggest impact is and how they can approach it to get there. So in terms of kind of net zero commitments, for example, what are the strategic processes that you can take? I think fundamentally, one of the first steps an organisation should take is develop the kind of data and the framework and understand that risk, do the risk assessments of what the key impacts are, and then build out a program to move forward. I think a lot of organisations will strive for perfection, which is not always achievable. And again, I think it's much better to have a kind of continual improvement approach, understand where you are now, where you want to be, and make sure that you plan that journey of how you can get from where you are now and where you want to be in the future. But yeah, I think it's just making sure that you understand what your biggest impacts are and align those to your business purpose as well. So again, from the Fidelity perspective, our investment approach is key, and we've made sure that we've embedded sustainability within that post.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ryan, can I please put the same question to you?
Yeah, I think this is a transition period where we saw that at COP26 as well, where both governments and the corporate sector and the public are sort of finding their way into a new reality. One, the damage that has occurred, and how to move towards a new form of both production and businesses which will not damage it any further. but of course, the challenge is that everything is based on the previous paradigms and previous source material, which is mostly carbon rich, and you can't just overnight change it to the new sources and completely change without a huge amount of investment, which can drive a lot of businesses into bankruptcy. So it's a difficult period, but I think there needs to be some sort of a recognition on the part of big investment companies such as Fidelity's and other to try and cajole the businesses and enterprises that look, the writing is on the wall, the inevitable is happening, and maybe they should try and incorporate more and more policies that are responsive to both sustainability, environment, and human rights. I think.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. Ben, my next question is, in your professional opinion, are there any specific measures that large and small businesses should be implementing in their offices in order to help mitigate and adapt to the negative impacts of climate change?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of practical steps that organisations can take. I think again, some organisations may already be taking activities that they don't account as being sustainable or being part of a sustainability program through, I don't know, right sizing of the business. Again, a lot of energy efficiency or other efficiency measures both have a kind of financial benefit as well as the sustainability benefit. So it's making sure that they frame those and capture those within an approach. And I think one way of doing that is through the implementation of an environmental management system. Now, I'm not saying that every organisation needs to get certified for their environmental management system, but aligning how you operate as a business, understanding some of the key elements of a management system in terms of defining policy, doing the kind of aspect and impact analysis, and then setting goals, both short term and long term, and then reviewing that on a regular basis to make sure that those are working and that you're on track to achieve the goals. I think that approach will really help organisations, both large and small, to make sure that again they're assessing what's most applicable to them, and that they're moving forward in terms of continually improving as an organisation.
Thank you very much. Dr. Rai, in your opinion, are there any measures that businesses should be implementing into their offices to help them mitigate and adapt to the negative impacts of climate change?
Well, yes, I think most of it has been covered by yourself, but the things like, for instance, how to reduce excessive energy consumption, how to try and source material from less carbon producing sources, to be more environmentally friendly. But I think what will also help is if the government and the large corporate sector are also to produce some sort of guidelines that are more not compliant, but more in line with businesses in the United Kingdom. Because what happens at the UN is they take a much broader international perspective, but they have to be translated into national culture, national customs, national way of doing business, as business normally realizes that doing business in China is not the same as doing business in this country. So some sort of a guiding, not leaflet, but more than a leaflet that is given to businesses when they are setting themselves up, would help them to understand that this is going to happen. This is so they could voluntarily move towards that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. Ben, my next question is, in your professional opinion, what initial steps should large and small businesses be taking when they're attempting to become more sustainable? In other words, what tips and advice would you offer them?
Yeah, and again, I think we've covered some of these points already. I think it's really data is key. So it's the data, having good data is key. I think if I give the example from Fidelity with from kind of some robust data collection processes across our global footprint, we've really identified that actually the electricity from our offices and air travel are two of the biggest kind of emitters in terms of our corporate operations, and they make up 90% of our overall greenhouse gas emissions. So if we focus on those two areas, that's where we're going to have the biggest impact. And again, I think going back to the point that was made around the regional differences, again, we understand now that in certain regions we can switch to a renewable energy provider, in other regions we can't. So I think doing that analysis and having the data to back up those decisions really helped. I think again, once you've done that data, once you've done that analysis, building out both the long-term plan but also having those short-term goals is really key. Those short-term goals and medium-term goals really make sure that you're on track for that long-term commitment. I think do you see a lot of organisations make long-term commitments without that plan in place, without that transition to net zero, for example. Without that interim plan, I think it's hard to take those in a credible manner. And I think the other factor I would say is look where you can have the biggest impact. I think if you take greenhouse gas emissions, for example, Fidelity, we're very focused on avoiding and reducing our emissions. We know we can't do that for all emissions. We know that we're going to have some residual that will need to either substitute or compensate for, but really focus on where you can have that biggest impact and make sure that you make kind of meaningful changes, both big and small. Another example is around travel. So again, air travel is one of our biggest emissions pre-COVID. Obviously, through COVID, that's reduced significantly because we haven't been able to travel, but we've still been able to operate effectively as a business. So again, as we come out of COVID, we're really looking at our travel policies and making sure that we're only traveling where we need to, and again, making sure that we use things like collaboration technology, etc., to be able to mitigate and reduce the impact from those operations.
Thank you very much. That's extremely insightful. Dr. Rai, in your opinion, what initial steps should large and small businesses be taking when they're attempting to become more sustainable? And have you got any tips and advice that you could offer them?
Well, I'm not a businessman, so I'm not sure what I can suggest, but I think the two things that businesses could start planning ahead of the inevitable, because there are lots of talks on how to mitigate large carbon emissions, how to make energy renewable, including local areas sharing an energy source, etc. Rather than businesses suddenly finding themselves with new costs or new arrangements, are they planning for that? So a bit of education would, I think, go a long way for them to start thinking ahead. That because I think what we can take from COP26 is not what wasn't done, but the fact that the states and everybody feels now under pressure to do something, and there's a lot of pressure from the public, from the media, and from everywhere. That the world has to get its act together, and that sometimes these things escalate quite fast, and changes come quite fast. And when changes come very fast, some collapse in that. Some businesses will collapse in that if they haven't planned for that. The second thing I think is more, I think, rather for the state and big investment companies and corporations. Maybe there needs to be some sort of incentivization of investing in those industries and those businesses that are compliant with renewables, with less carbon production or even zero carbon emissions by either giving a slightly more favorable loans, either maybe sustained by the government, or these things have to be looked at. So why, for instance, the question is, we asked one or two very big corporations over there who had stalls, and it was saying they had invested in a lot of environmentally friendly, compliant businesses. And I said, well, if my business, I come to you with a model which is not environmentally friendly, but is going to make a lot of profit and give you the money that you need, would you not invest in it? Of course, they would invest in it. So why? What is the difference between, why is there a compulsion on me? What's the pressure on me to be more compliant within the new rules? If there is nothing I am going to achieve in terms of profit or a better investment structure from you. And I think this is where the state and the corporate sector can work together. And it shouldn't be the state throwing it on the corporate sector and saying, you take the loss. But I think the loss has to be, that gap has to be taken all around.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rai. Moving slightly away from environmental considerations, Ben, I know it's covered quite a lot in your most recent CSR report, but could you give us a snapshot into Fidelity, or an insight into Fidelity's commitment to equity and inclusion?
Yeah, I mean, equity and inclusion is key to the Fidelity culture. Again, as you said, we've set certain targets in terms of gender diversity, cultural diversity. We've got action plans in place to achieve those. And I think it's again an area that we see as an important part of our overall corporate sustainability strategy. I think it's also important that we don't look at these different areas in terms of environment, social, governance in isolation. I think you do need a cohesive strategy. Again, some of these can interlink. Things you may do on one side may affect the other side as well. So it's a key part. And kind of my colleagues in HR do a great job to ensure that it's part of the culture at Fidelity, and that we ensure where possible that both internally, in terms of our employees, that we're diverse and inclusive, but also working down the supply chain as well, making sure that we work with diverse suppliers, etc., as part of that process.
Thank you very much. Ben, I don't know if you have, that was the last question I had for you, but I don't know if you have any concluding remarks you'd like to make at all.
No, just to say, yeah, no, thanks for having me. Really good discussion. I think, again, corporate sustainability is front and centre for most companies now. Things like COP26 and other big kind of mega trends around climate change. Again, people coming out of the COVID pandemic. Again, I think this is going to be the next big area of focus. But yeah, it's important for businesses, and hopefully what I've shared today can give an insight into how we're approaching it at Fidelity, but also how it can be applied in other corporates and businesses as well.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Dr. Rai, for taking time out of what for both of you is very busy schedules, I'm sure. I just have a few concluding remarks, and this podcast has been brought to you by the Sikh Human Rights Group. For more information about Fidelity International Limited and the Sikh Human Rights Group's policies, please visit our website, the link to which can be found within the description to this video. Or alternatively, please visit our social media accounts at SHRG_NGO. I've been Carl Sabathnot. Thank you very much for listening.